In this video, we'll be covering the chapter Federalism from class 10th. Let's start with the overview. In the previous chapter, we noted that vertical division of power among different levels of government is one of the major forms of power sharing in modern democracies. Now, we also learned that power sharing saved some countries like Belgium and Lebanon, while not doing that led to civil wars in Sri Lanka. In this chapter, we focus on the form of power sharing, on this form of power sharing. It is most commonly referred to as federalism, key term. We begin by describing federalism in general terms. The rest of the chapter tries to understand the theory and practice of federalism in India. A discussion of federal constitutional provisions is followed by an analysis of the policies and politics that has strengthened federalism in practice. Towards the end of the chapter, we turn to the local government, a new and third tier of the Indian federalism. So let's get started. We begin with what is federalism? Let us get back to the contrast between Belgium and Sri Lanka. Now, in the last chapter, we learned about Belgium and Sri Lanka, where Belgium used power sharing to divide the power between the communities, the Germans, the Dutch speaking, and the French, and they smartly avoided civil war. But in Sri Lanka, the Sinhala speaking community passed some majoritarian laws and asserted their dominance over the Tamil people. So the Tamil people and the Sinhala people went into a civil war that caused the death of many. Okay, that we saw in the last chapter. You would recall that one of the key changes made in the constitution of Belgium was to reduce the power of the central government and to give these powers to the regional governments. Now, in the last chapter itself, we had a side thing like this, in which the person asked, isn't power sharing a method of reducing the power of the central government? This chapter is basically an answer to that question. Regional governments existed in Belgium even earlier. Okay? They had their roles and powers. But all these powers were given to these governments and could be withdrawn by the central government. Wait. The change that took place in 1993 was that the regional governments were given constitutional powers that were no longer dependent on the central government. Now, the thing is, this is an important fact. You can use this in exams and maybe score some extra points. Thus, Belgium shifted from a unitary to a federal form of government. Some things to mark here is 1993, and thus Belgium shifted from a unitary to a federal form of government. And then we are also talking about Sri Lanka, which is also to be marked. So Sri Lanka continues to be, for all the practical purposes, a unitary system where the national government has all the powers. From this, we can understand what is the meaning of federal and unitary. Unitary is when the central government has all the powers, and federal is when all the regional or local governments along with the central government has constitutional powers. Okay, Federalism is a system of government in which power is divided between a central authority and various constituent units of a country. Okay, so this is a sure question, and a question about this is sure to come in even the board exams. Usually, a federation has two levels of government. One is the government for the entire country, that is usually responsible for a few subjects of common national interest. These are additional points. Okay, the others are governments at the level of provinces or states that look after much of the day to day administration of their state. Their state. Okay, that's a point. Both these levels of government enjoy the power independent of the other. This is a key term because in federalism, there are local governments which enjoy freedom, okay, from the central government. Okay, they are not directly related. That is, the power of the central government, the local government is not controlled by the central government, or that the local government has some constitutional power. Okay. Now, as you can see, this map shows us the countries which are federal, or the red countries are federations that practice what? Federalism. So, Russia practices federalism, Australia, India, Pakistan, Ethiopia, United Arab Emirates, South Africa, Nigeria, Belgium, no, this is Spain. Spain, Switzerland, Austria, Belgium, and Germany, United States, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and some countries in Micronesia. Oh, here also Saint Kitts and Nevis, Brazil, and Argentina. And there are many more countries. All the reds here are federal political systems. So from this we could also get some examples. So if you are asked to find the definition of federalism, you could say federalism is a system of government in which the power is divided among the central authority, right, and various constituent units of the country. Examples are Russia, India, Canada, United States, etc. You could say that. In this sense, federations are contrasted with unitary governments. Okay. So, in what sense? The local governments get power, and that is free from the central government. That is, the regional governments has constitutional powers. And in this sense, the federations are contrasted with the unitary governments. Under unitary system, either there is only one level of government, or the subunits are subordinate to the central government. So, let's mark this. I'll explain why. The central governments can pass on orders to the provincial or local government. Okay, so here is it. Under the unitary system, either there is only one level of government, or the subunits are subordinate to the central government. The central government can pass on orders to the provincial or local government. But in a federal system, the central government cannot order the state government to do something. Okay, state government has powers of its own, for which it is not answerable to the central government. Both these governments are separately answerable to the people. Okay. Uh, why did I mark this point? It is due to the fact that this is a quite important point, and a question of this can come for, I think, 4 or 5 marks in the board exams. Minimum 3. Okay, that is the difference between unitary system and federal system of governments. Okay. And all the following 7 features are also important as they could help us distinguish from a federal system and a unitary system of government. There are 2 or more levels of government in a federal system. Different tiers of government govern the same citizens, but each tier has its own jurisdiction in specific matters of legislation, taxation, and administration. The jurisdiction of the respective levels or tiers of governments are specified in the Constitution. So, the existence and authority of each tier of government is constitutionally guaranteed. Okay, the fundamental provisions of the Constitution cannot be unilaterally changed by one level of government. Such changes require the consent of both levels of the government. Since there are 7 large points, at the end I shall be summarizing all this so that it can be easily understood. Courts have the power to interpret the constitution and the power of different levels of government. The highest court acts as an umpire if disputes arise between the different levels of government in the exercise of their powers, or in the exercise of their respective powers. Courts has the power to interpret the constitution and the power of different levels of government. The highest court acts as an umpire, and uh, if disputes arise between different levels of government in the exercise of their respective power, the highest court acts upon it. Sources of revenue for each level of government are clearly specified to ensure financial autonomy. Okay, so one level should not depend on the other. Okay, and the federal system thus has dual objectives: to safeguard and promote the unity of the country while at the same time accommodate regional diversity. Therefore, 2 aspects are crucial for the institutions and practice of federalism. Governments at Governments at different levels should agree to some rules of power sharing. They should also trust that each would abide by its part of the agreement. An ideal federal system has both aspects: mutual trust and agreement to live together. So, the federal system has thus dual objectives: to safeguard and promote unity of the country while at the same time to accommodate regional diversity. Okay, now I had to mark this section red because this question, you can expect this question a lot. As a separate question, there is another interesting fact. Okay, so the question might be a 1 mark question. What are the objectives of a federal system? It is to ensure unity of the people of a country and also accommodating regional diversity. Okay, therefore, 2 aspects are crucial for the institutions and practice of federalism. Governments at different levels should agree to some rules of power sharing. They should also trust that each would abide by its part of the agreement. An ideal federal system has both aspects: mutual trust and agreement to live together. Okay. Now, the exact balance of power between the central and the state governments vary from one federation to the other. Okay. This balance depends mainly on the historical context in which the federation was formed. There are two kinds of routes through which federations have been formed. The first route involves independent states coming together on their own to form a bigger unit, so that uh, by pooling sovereignty and retaining identity, they can increase their security. This type of coming together federations are USA, Switzerland, and Australia. In the first category of federalism, all the constituent states usually have an equal power and are strong, vice versa, the federal government. Okay. The first route involves independent states coming together on their own to form a bigger unit, so that by pooling their sovereignty and retaining their identities, they can increase their security. This type of coming together federations include USA, Switzerland, and Australia. Uh, in the first category of federalism, all the constituent states have equal power and are strong, vice versa, the federal government. Okay, and the second route is where a large country decides to divide its power among between the constituent states and the national government. Okay, so here's the major difference in the coming together federations. In the coming together federations, all states have equal power. Okay, all states have equal power. And in the second one, we are just completing it. India, Spain, and Belgium are examples of this kind of holding together federations. In the second category, the central government tends to be more powerful vis-a-vis the states. Okay, very often different constituent units of the federation have unequal powers. Okay, and some units are guaranteed special powers. So this one, usually central government oh, tends to have more power. Usually central government tends to have more power in holding together federations. Okay, so from this two questions may come. One, difference or differentiate between coming together and okay, I'm lazy to write. Differentiate between coming together federations and holding together federations. So in this you can write how they are formed. Okay, so in the first one, independent states come together to pool their sovereignty and have more security, basically. Okay, and they still retain their identity. The second one, that is the holding together federations, uh, it is one state and it divides to share its power among different states and the national government. Okay, then you can also mention the examples at the end, but before that, you'll have to talk about the speciality. Okay, so all the states have equal power in uh, coming together federations, but all the states do not have equal power in holding together federations. You could say that. Okay. And you could also mention that some units do not have special since all the units have special powers in coming together federations, there is no special consideration of some units. But in the second one, that is the holding together federations, some units are granted special powers. Okay, so you can mention three reasons, say that to yourself for 5 minutes. And this is one type of question that could come from this paragraph, from these two paragraphs. Another question that could come is, what are the two types of federations, and explain the two types of federations. These two type questions can come. The first one for 3 marks, 2 to 3 marks, and the second one for 5 marks. So if you study these, you can get guaranteed 5 marks. So this is some extra point you could check. Some Nepalese citizens were discussing the proposals of the adoption of federalism in their new constitution, because some years before the king in Nepal was abolished and now it is a democracy. I think it's not a democracy. It does not have a specific king now. That's what I know. I don't know much information about it. This is what some of them said. Khajraj, I don't like federalism. It would lead to the reservation of seats for different caste groups as in India. Sarida, ours is not a very big country. We don't need federalism. Babulal, I am hopeful that the Terai areas will get more autonomy if they get their own state government. Ram Ganesh, I like federalism because it means that the power that were earlier enjoyed by the king will now be exercised by our elected representatives. If you were practicing in this, participating in this conversation, what would your responses to each of these be? Which of these reflect a wrong understanding of federalism is, and what makes India a federal country? Now, this question, give it more importance because such questions are coming in the board exams. Okay, so if I were my response to each of these would be, federalism is good because it makes the people of a country unite, and it helps the people feel like they're also part of something bigger. So it's just like Belgium, and Sarita says that our country is not a big country, we don't need federalism, but Belgium is smaller than Nepal, or I hope, in the world map. But they still have it, and their country is working perfectly fine. That helps a lot of people. Now, one more thing, what Khajraj said is quite wrong, because federalism does not mean the reservation of seats for different caste groups. Okay, it means the division of power between the central government and the provinces. Okay, what constitutional provinces, right? Constituent units. Constituent units. Okay, it's not a reservation of seats for different caste groups. Okay, reservation of seats is a separate thing. It's not related with federalism. What else? What is the next question? What makes India a federal country? India divides its power among the central government, the state, and local government. That makes India a federal country by the definition of federalism. That's all. Okay. These questions should be noted. This is Bloom's revised. Okay. Bloom's revised taxonomy level 5, in which you will have to analyze different statements. Important questions, such questions are being asked in the board exams in these years. What makes India a federal country? Now, this question is being answered here, and I hope my answer is also correct. We have earlier seen how small countries like Belgium and Sri Lanka face so many problems of managing diversity. What about a vast country like India with so many languages, religions, and regions? What are the power sharing arrangements of our country? Let us begin with the constitution. India had emerged as an independent nation after a painful and bloody partition. Soon after independence, several princely states became a part of the country. Okay, so this is not quite an important sentence, and there is a high probability that this won't be asked in the board exams, but keep it just in case. The constitution declared India as a union of states. Although it did not use the word federation, Indian Union is based on the principles of federalism. Okay, let us go back to the 7 features of federalism mentioned above. We can see that all these features apply to the provisions of the Indian Constitution. One, it has its own jurisdiction. Two, there are more than 2 levels of government. Okay, uh, it each jurisdiction of respective levels or tiers of government are specified to the are specified in the constitution. Their existence and authority uh, of each tier of government is constitutionally guaranteed, um, and one, that is the central government itself, cannot make any differences on the constitution without the consent of all the regional levels. uh, Courts does have the power to interpret the constitution. Okay, and if there is any issues between two governments, then the highest government, that is the Supreme Court, um be the umpire. Okay, and decides. um, and what else? Sources of revenue for each level of government are clearly specified to ensure the financial autonomy. Yes, that also works. And the two objectives of the federalism also works in India. That's why India is a federal country. We can see that all these features apply to the provisions of the Indian Constitution. The Constitution originally provided a two-tier system of government. The Union government, or what we call the central government, representing the Union of India, and the state government. Okay, so later, a third tier of federalism was also added in the form of panchayats and municipalities. As in any federation, these different tiers enjoy separate jurisdiction. The Constitution clearly provides a threefold distribution of legislative power between the union and the state governments. Thus, it contains 3 lists. What are the 3 lists? Union list, it includes subjects of national importance. So, Union list includes subjects of national importance such as defense of the country, foreign affairs, banking, communication, and currency. They are included in this list because we need a uniform policy on these matters throughout the country. Currency, banking, foreign affairs, defense, and communication. Okay, these are throughout the country. Okay, and those are important. The union government alone can make laws related to the subjects mentioned in the union list. Okay, so okay. Then there's a state list, contains subjects. State list contains subjects of state and local importance such as police, trade, commerce, agriculture, and irrigation. Okay, these are of the states. The state government alone can make laws relating to the subjects mentioned in the state list. Okay, now let's say that hold on. This is the union list and this is the state list. So as you can see, there is a place where both of these is on top of the other, and this is the concurrent list. So the concurrent list includes the subjects of common interest to both the union government as well as the state government, such as education, forest, trade unions, marriage, adoption, and succession. Both the union as well as the state governments can make laws on the subjects mentioned in these lists. If their laws conflict with each other, the law made by the union government will prevail, because in holding together federations like India, union government has more authority than the state government. Now, what about the subjects that do not fall in any of the three lists, or subjects like computer software that came up after the constitution was made? According to our constitution, the union government has the power to legislate on these residuary subjects. So, these are called residuary subjects, okay, that do not fall under any of these. And the union government has the power to legislate on the residuary subjects like AI, computer, and so on. We noted above that most federations that are formed by holding together do not give equal power to its constituent units. Thus, all states in the Indian Union do not have identical powers. Some states enjoy a special status that we mentioned before. States such as Assam, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, and Mizoram enjoy special powers under certain provisions of the Constitution of India, Article 371, due to their peculiar social and historic circumstances. These special powers are enjoyed in relation to the protection of land rights of indigenous people, their culture, and also preferential employment in government services. Indians who are not permanent resident of the state cannot buy land or house here. Similarly, special provisions exist for other states of India as well. Okay, here states such as Assam, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, and Mizoram enjoy special powers under certain provisions of the Indian Constitution, that is the Article 371, due to their peculiar social and historical circumstances. These special powers are especially enjoyed in relation to the protection of the land rights of the indigenous people. Important point right here: land rights of indigenous people, their culture, and also preferential employment in government services. Okay. Now, Indians who are not permanent residents of this state cannot buy land or house here. Similar special provisions are provided for some other states of India as well. Important. See, the thing is that there are some things that we have to memorize, such as the definition of holding together federations, coming together federation, federalism, etc. And there are some things that we need to understand and learn, such as these. And instead of that, if you just, by heart this entire thing, I can assure you that you will suffer before the exam. Understand it now. There are some units of the Indian Union which enjoy very little power. These are areas which are too small to become an independent state, but also cannot be merged with any of the existing states. These areas like Chandigarh or Lakshadweep or the capital city Delhi are called union territories. There are some units of the Indian Union which enjoy very little power. These are areas which are too small to become an independent state, but these could not be merged with any of the existing states. These areas like Chandigarh, Lakshadweep, or capital city Delhi are called union territories. These territories do not have the powers of a state. Okay, the central government has special powers in running these areas. Okay, this sharing of power between the union government and the state government is basic to the structure of the constitution. It is not easy to make changes to this power sharing arrangement when the parliament cannot on its own change this arrangement. Any change to it has to be first passed by the houses of parliament with at least two-third majority. Then it has to be ratified by the legislature of at least half of the total states. The judiciary plays an important role in overseeing the implementations of the constitutional provisions and procedures. In case of any dispute among the division of powers, the high courts and the supreme courts can make a decision. Okay, the union and the state governments have the power to raise resources by levying taxes in order to carry on the government and the responsibilities uh, assigned to each of them. Okay, so important points are: any change to it has to be first passed by both houses of the parliament with at least two-thirds majority. Then it has to be ratified by the legislature of at least half of the total states. Okay. The judiciary plays an important role in overseeing the implementation of the constitutional provisions and procedures. In case any dispute among the division of powers, the high courts and supreme courts make a decision. The union and the state governments have the power to raise resources by levying taxes in order to carry on the government and the responsibilities assigned to each of them. The next part: how is federalism practiced? Constitutional provisions are necessary for the success of federalism, but these are not sufficient. If the federal experiment has succeeded in India, it is not merely because of the clearly laid out constitutional provisions. The real success of federalism in India can be attributed to the nature of democratic politics in our country. This ensured that the spirit of federalism, respect for diversity, and the desire for living together became shared ideals in our country. Let us look at some of the major ways in which this happened. Okay, linguistic states. The creation of linguistic states was the first and the major test for the democratic politics in our country. If you look at the political map of India, when it began its journey as the democracy in 1947 and that of 2019, you will be surprised by the extent of the changes. Many old states have vanished and new states have been created. Areas, boundaries, and the name of the states have been changed. In 1947, the boundaries of several old states were changed in order to create new states. This was done to ensure that the people who spoke the same languages lived in the same state. Some states were created not only on the basis of languages but to recognize the differences based on culture, ethnicity, or geography. This includes Nagaland, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand. Okay. So here, why was the states of 1947 changed in order to create new states? This was done to ensure that people who spoke the same language lived in the same states and the differences are recognized. Some states were not created on the basis of language but to recognize the difference between the ethnicity, culture, or geography. Okay? When the demand for the formation of states on the basis of language was raised, some national leaders feared that it would lead to the disintegration of the country. The central government resisted linguistic states for some time, but experience has shown that the formation of linguistic states has actually made the country more united. It has also made administration easier. Okay. This has a low probability of coming, but again, what was the fears of the national leaders that led to the okay? What was the fear of nationalists when the demand for the formation of states on the basis of language was raised? One mark question: they thought that the country will be disintegrated if linguistic states was created. Okay, and that is why the central government resisted linguistic states for some time. Okay, and what is the peculiarity or what has linguistic states done for India? It has increased the unity of the country, okay, and it also made the administration easier. Language policy. A second test for Indian Federation is the language policy. Our constitution did not give the status of national language to any one language. Hindi was identified as the official language, but Hindi is the mother tongue of only about 40% of Indians. Therefore, there were many safeguards to protect other languages. Beside Hindi, there are 22 other languages recognized as the scheduled languages by the Constitution. A candidate in the examination conducted for the central government positions may opt to take the examination in any of these languages. States too have their own official languages. Much of the government work takes place in official languages of this concerned state. So, Hindi was identified as the official language, but Hindi is the mother tongue of only 40% of Indians. Therefore, other languages are also safeguarded. Hindi, there are 22 other languages recognized as scheduled languages by the Constitution. A candidate in an exam conducted for central government positions may opt to take the examination in any of these languages. States who have their official languages. Much of the government work takes place in official languages of the concerned state. Okay? Unlike Sri Lanka, the leaders of our country adopted a very cautious attitude in spreading the use of Hindi. According to the constitution, the use of English for official purpose was to stop in 1965. Important. However, many non Hindi speaking states demanded that the use of English continue. In Tamil Nadu, this movement took a violent form. The central government responded by agreeing to continue the use of English along with Hindi for official purposes. Many critics think that this solution favored the English speaking elite. Promotion of Hindi continues to be the official policy of the Government of India. Promotion does not mean that the central government can impose Hindi on states where people speak a different language. The flexibility shown by the Indian political leaders helped our country avoid kind of situations like Sri Lanka finds itself in. Okay, let's continue. The flexibility shown by Indian political leaders helped the country to avoid the situations of Sri Lanka finds itself in. Now, central state relations. Reconstructing the center state relationships is one more way in which federalism has been strengthened in practice. How the constitutional arrangements for sharing power uh, work in reality depends to a larger extent on how the ruling parties and the leaders follow these arrangements. For a long time, the same party ruled both at the center and in most of the states. This meant that the state governments did not exercise their rights as the autonomous federal units. As and when the ruling party and the state level was different, the parties that ruled at the center tried to undermine the power of the states. In those days, the central government would often misuse the constitution to dismiss the state governments as they were controlled by rival parties. This undermined the spirit of federalism. All this changed significantly after 1919. This period saw the rise of regional political parties in many state and country. This was also the beginning of an era of coalition government as the center. Since no single party got a clear majority into the Lok Sabha, the major parties had to enter into an alliance with many parties, including several regional parties, to form a government at the center. This led to a new culture of power sharing and respect for the autonomy of state governments. This trend was supported by a major judgment of the Supreme Court that made it difficult for the central government to dismiss state governments in arbitrary manner. Thus, federal power sharing is more effective today than it was in the early years after the constitution came into force. Let's see. Okay. All this changed significantly after 1990. Okay, this saw the rise of regional political parties in many states of the country. This was also the beginning of the era of coalition governments at the center. Okay, uh, national parties had to enter into an alliance with many parties, including several regional parties, to form a government at the center. New culture of power sharing and respect for the autonomy of state governments. Okay, and this trend was supported by a major judgment at the Supreme Court that made it difficult for the central government to dismiss the state governments in an arbitrary manner. Okay, great. Decentralization in India, the next point. We noted above that the federal government has two or more tiers of government. What have we have so far discussed the two tiers of government in our country, but a vast country like India cannot only run through these two tiers. States in India as large States in India are as large as independent countries of Europe. So, for example, Uttar Pradesh is bigger than Russia. Uttar Pradesh bigger than Russia. Kill me right now. Bro, bro, this is Russia. This is Russia, this big thing. Even India is not even that much. And now they're telling me that Uttar Pradesh, this small little thing over here, is bigger than this? What? This is a very big error in the CBSE. Can we write to CBS about this or something? So I read it again and it says in terms of population, which I completely missed. Uttar Pradesh is bigger than Russia in terms of population. Okay, I should have noted that. Maharashtra is about as big as Germany in terms of population. Many of these states are internally very diverse. There is thus a need for power sharing within these states. Okay. Many of these states are internally very diverse. There is thus a need for power sharing within these states. Federal power sharing in India needs another tier of government below that of the state government. This is the rationale for decentralization of power. Thus resulted, uh, thus resulted a third tier of government, which is called the local government. What is the need for a third tier of government? A question can come like that. A vast country like India cannot be run only through these two tiers of government. States in India are as large as independent countries of Europe. In terms of population, Uttar Pradesh is bigger than Russia, Maharashtra is about big as Germany. Many of these states are internally very diverse. There is thus a need for power sharing within these states. Federal power sharing in India needs another tier of government below that of the state governments. This is the rationale for decentralization of power. Thus resulted a third tier of government called local government. Okay? When power is taken away from the central and state government and given to local government, it is called decentralization. Okay, so when the power is taken away from the central and state government and given to local government, it is called decentralization. The basic idea behind decentralization is that there is a number of problems and issues which are best settled at the local level. People have better knowledge of the problems in their localities. They also have better ideas on where to spend money and how to manage things more efficiently. Besides, at the local level, it is possible for the people to directly participate in decision making. This helps to include a habit of democratic participation. Local governments is the best way to realize one important principle of democracy, namely local self government. People have better knowledge of the problems in their localities. They also have more efficiently. Besides the local level, it is possible to participate in decision making. This helps. Okay. This entire part is important. Okay. And the question that would come in this is, what is the idea of uh, local government? What is decentralization? Or a 5-mark question, what is decentralization and what is the idea behind decentralization? Okay. The need for decentralization was recognized in our constitution. Since then, there have been several attempts to decentralize power to the level of villages and towns. Panchayat and villages in municipalities and urban areas were set up in all states, but these were directly under the control of the state governments. Elections to these local governments were not held regularly. Local governments did not have any power of resources of their own. Thus, there was very little decentralization in effective terms. A major step towards decentralization was taken in 1992. The constitution was amended to make a third tier of democracy more powerful and effective. Okay. And these are the points. Now it is constitutionally mandatory to hold regular elections to local government bodies. Okay. Seats are reserved in the elected bodies and executive heads of these institutions for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. At least one third of all positions are reserved for women. An independent institution called the State Election Commission had been created in each state to conduct panchayat and municipal elections. The state government are required to share some powers and revenue with local government bodies. Okay. Um the nature of sharing varies from state to state. Rural local government is popularly known by the name of Panchayati Raj. Each village or a group of villages in some states have Gram Panchayat. Okay, so rural local government is popularly known as Panchayati Raj. Each village or group of villages have, in some states, have a Gram Panchayat. This council is consisting of several ward members. Okay, often called Panch because there are 5 people. And a president or sarpanch are directly elected by the adult population living in that ward or village. It is the decision making body for the entire village, and the panchayat works under the overall supervision of the Gram Sabha. Okay. Now, all voters in the village are its members. It has to meet at least twice or thrice in a year to approve the annual budget of the Gram Panchayat and to review the performance of the Gram Panchayat. These are very important points that you need to check. Okay? The local government structure goes right up to the district level. A few Gram Panchayat are grouped together to form what is usually called a Panchayat Samiti or block or mandal. The members of this representative body are elected by all the Panchayat members in that area. Okay. And who are the Panchayat members? It is everyone in the village. Okay. It's given above. All the voters in the village are its members, right? Okay. All the Panchayat Samitis or Mandals in a district together constitute the Zilla, the district Parishad. Most members of the Zilla Parishad are elected. Most members of the Zilla Parishad are elected. Okay. So, most members of the Zilla Parishad are elected. Members of the Lok Sabha and MLA of that district and some other officials of the district level bodies are also its members. Zilla Parishad chairperson is the political head of the Zilla Parishad. Okay. Similarly, local government bodies exist for urban areas as well. Okay. Similarly, local government bodies exist for urban areas as well. Municipalities are set up in towns, big cities. Towns. Big cities are constituted into municipal corporations. Both municipalities and municipal corporations are controlled by elected bodies consisting of people's representatives. The municipal chairperson is the political head of the municipalities. Okay. In a municipal corporation, Such an officer is called the mayor. This new system of local government is the largest experiment in democracy conducted anywhere in the world. There are now about 36 lakh elected representatives in the panchayat and municipalities, etc., all over the country. Okay? This number is bigger than the population of many countries in the world. Constitutional status for local government has helped to deepen democracy in our country. It has also increased the women's representation and voice in our democracy. At the same time, there are many difficulties. While elections are held regularly and enthusiastically, Gram Sabhas are not held regularly. Most state governments have not transferred significant powers to the local government, nor have they given adequate resources. We are thus still a long way away uh, from realizing the ideal of self government. And that is all the major and important things in this chapter. So that's it. Thanks for watching and bye.